Today we cancel a woman by the name of Jessica Taylor, Dr. Jessica Taylor to be specific. She has a PhD in forensic psychology and for some reason needs that piece of paper acknowledged every time someone says her name. She's also a self-described radical feminist author who recently wrote the book Sexy But Psycho. I don't know anything about the book, but based on the title, I'm going to assume that it's half biography and half fiction. I'll let you decide which half is which. In any case, yesterday, Dr. Taylor tweeted this. She says, "I wish there was more honesty in the world about how many women feel trapped by motherhood, marriage, and being a 24/7 slave to men and children, whilst the TV and magazines frame it as some sort of feminine ideal bliss. So many women regret it, but they can't say a word." She continues in a follow-up. She says, "It really is one of the biggest taboos in the world. Women who regret having children or regret getting married or both. The women who had big plans, big personalities, big ambitions to find themselves trapped for decades, making themselves feel smaller and smaller." Okay, now to use the tedious modern cliche, there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, you might ask how Jessica knows what many women think and feel if by her admission they don't say a word. It would seem that she has a prejudice against marriage and family life and merely assumes that the prejudice must be shared by most other people, which is common in narcissists. They struggle to see the world as distinct from themselves. As a narcissist, she can't fathom that other humans exist in the world as wholly separate entities and live their own lives just as vivid as her own, and may see things differently and have different feelings. She also knows that if she is alone in her contempt for the nuclear family, or in a minority at least, then that makes her simply a bitter, lonely person. It would mean that it's possible for her to be another way, that another path was available, but she chose this instead. And she can't face that possibility, so she projects her neuroses and her hatreds onto others. And I was able to come up with that whole diagnosis without even getting my psychiatry PhD. That's how good I am. Now, that aside, there are a few other pieces of this puzzle that need closer inspection. In fact, nearly every word is wrong, so it might be best to go again line by line and discover just how much wrongness there is here. So again, she begins, "I wish there was more honesty in the world about how many women feel trapped by motherhood, marriage, and being a 24/7 slave to men and children." Okay, the problem there is most obviously that she compares motherhood and wifehood to slavery. The difference, though, is that women choose to be mothers and wives unless they live in like Saudi Arabia or something. But Jessica doesn't make that stipulation. These rad femmes never do. They tend to let the fundamentalist Muslim world off the hook completely. But apart from instances of arranged marriages and actual sex slavery and that sort of thing, this is a life that women choose. Also, in slavery, you're producing goods or performing a service for someone else with no benefit to yourself. In motherhood, you're helping to build and maintain a family, your own family. It is yours. You are giving yourself to something that is yours in a very intimate and personal sense. And in that, you find another crucial distinction. Slavery is dehumanizing. A person in slavery is not a person, but a machine. That'll be the case for our intern whenever we hire one. In family life, on the other hand, you are fulfilled, you're made whole, you're edified, completed, lifted up by your relationship with your family and your service to your family. I could go on, but hopefully I've already given enough differences between motherhood and slavery to convince you. Hopefully you didn't need to be convinced in the first place. Continuing, she says, "Whilst the TV and magazines frame it, marriage, motherhood, as some sort of feminine ideal bliss." Now, this would be a good point if it was coming from someone who hasn't watched any TV show or film or read any magazine since about the year 1942. In modern times, however, Hollywood is constantly hammering on the point that the traditional suburban white picket fence life is actually a grim dystopian hell. That's what American Beauty was all about, and many films before and since have revisited that theme. Hollywood at some point discovered the shocking truth that sometimes women in single-family homes in the suburbs aren't happy, and they since decided that all women in those types of setups are unhappy all the time, and that they're all having illicit affairs, and their husbands are all closeted homosexuals. This has been Hollywood's version of suburbia for decades now. Jessica, in fact, got this idea from Hollywood. Then she says, "It really is one of the biggest taboos in the world, women who regret having children or regret getting married or both." Now, this goes back to the first line where she calls for honesty. It's pretty common these days for people to confuse self-centered whining with taboo-breaking honesty, and we see it again here. I mean, we've all known people in our lives who profess that they want to be honest about their feelings. And what that means in practice is just that they complain all the time and they whine about every misfortune or discomfort, and they expect you to pity them for their troubles, but also admire them for their bold and courageous honesty at the same time. But the fact is that even if a woman is feeling unhappy at home or in her marriage, she should not be honest about it in the sense of talking about it publicly. She especially should not be honest about her regrets about having children if she is in fact experiencing those regrets. I doubt that those regrets are nearly as common as Jessica believes and hopes, but if a certain portion of women feel that way, but they don't say it out loud, good for them. They shouldn't say it out loud. Your parenting regrets are the kind of thing you keep to yourself, a burden you carry on your own as you work to fix whatever character defect has caused you to feel that way. Finally, she refers to the women who had big plans, big personalities, and big ambitions find themselves trapped for decades, making themselves smaller and smaller. Now, I fail to see why anyone's personality should be constrained by marriage and family life. My wife has personality for days. If anything, her personality has become bigger and more boisterous since I met her. Some of that may be compensation for the fact that she married a cynical bastard. I don't know. But as for big plans and big ambitions, I mean, what do you mean? Sitting in a cubicle? Working in middle management somewhere? Being on a payroll? Those are the big plans? There's no reason why a woman can't do those things also while having a family. Many women do. But the way these people paint the working world as some kind of utopia where dreams are fulfilled and people become larger and more vivid and more interesting human beings, I find that laughable, especially coming from people who most of the time fashion themselves as anti-corporate socialists. So which is it? Is the corporate world the fulfillment of a woman's dreams and the avenue to her liberation and happiness? Or is it exploitation and its own form of slavery? The left's opinion on the subject seems to change with the tide, as with every other subject. It's all a mess, therefore, just like Jessica's worldview and probably her life as well. Now, I don't think that working a job is exploitation, but I do know that in the working world, in your job, you are completely replaceable. You will leave your job one day and you'll be replaced the next day, and nobody will remember you or care that you're gone. The hole you leave behind will be filled as quickly as it was made, and that will be it. In your family, that's not the case. If you leave your family through death or by your own choice or however, whatever the case, a hole will be left behind that nobody will ever fill completely. And you will be missed and remembered, and the impact you made will be felt, for better or worse, for generations. That's the difference between your job and your family. And it's another reason why everything Jessica said is wrong. Every word, every line, every assumption underpinning it. Her ideas are silly and trite and out of touch and sad and wrong. But other than that, great points. Thanks, Jessica. Also, you're canceled. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with all your friends.